Welcome to episode 7 of the Civil War Breakfast Club. Joined by my co-host, the lovely Mary Fincher. I am merely Darren Weeks. Good evening, Mary, and how are you today?
Good evening, Darren. Oh, God.
I like doing the intro. It's a lot of fun. And how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Today is a very special day. You know why it's a special day? There's two reasons why it's a special day.
The Tribe are playing the Yankees, and they're hopefully
No. I was going to say, for the second time in 3 years, the Boston Red Sox are about to embark on a World Series championship drive. They're going to win it for the second time in 3 years, right?
Golf tournament.
Yeah, I didn't watch any baseball. I assume the Red Sox are in it, right? Are they in it?
They're not.
Kill me. Anyway, the real reason why is we finally, about greatest battle in Mary's life, the Battle of Chickamauga. It's why we call her Chickamauga, the Battle of Chickamauga. We're going to talk about that tonight on a beautiful, beautiful autumnal evening.
Yes, again, but I'm stuck inside because it's raining, and I'm just changing my name on here to Chickamauga because that's the name I was last week on our Facebook Live on Saturday. Really, that's nickname that Darren has christened me with is Chickamauga because it's my kind of my battle.
To say it's your battle is your battle, and it's a great battle. We're going to talk about the background. We're going to talk about the battle itself. We're going to talk about actually, you know why it's another special night? I just realized this is going to be the beginning of another two-parter.
It is.
And we're going to actually leave this one on a cliffhanger at the end, I believe.
Yeah.
For those who don't follow the Battle of Chickamauga, there's a lot of great intrigue. A lot of folks tend to focus on the East, myself included. And we did a fantastic job, Mary, on the Battle of Antietam last week. And today we're going to take our traveling roadshow west to the northern part of Georgia, southern part of Tennessee. And we're going to talk about the big Battle of Chickamauga. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I love that we're covering like Eastern and Western theater kind of equally.
East side, west side.
In the whole Civil War, they're all important. When you start to do the deep dives in these battles, you're like, wow, that's important for this reason. I've used the analogy of stepping stones a lot. It's like if certain things don't happen, then you don't have certain battles. And certain battles are important for different reasons. For instance, Chickamauga is important because it is centered around the city of Chattanooga, which was an important railway hub. It's not an overly populous city in the South at all, but it's got the Tennessee River around it. And as I said, it's a railway hub. But President Lincoln saw it as being just as important as Richmond.
Absolutely. I mean, not only, we'll talk more about it going forward, but, the Chickamauga, Chattanooga area, obviously, big part of the Southern military complex, the industrial complex. As you mentioned, has the railroad hubs. It's basically right in the middle of everything. And this is one that I think a lot of people don't really study on, but it's a gigantic battle. You're talking 60,000 Union guys, 65,000, 66,000 Tennessee guys from the Army of Tennessee. And I think a lot of people don't realize, they think maybe Chickamauga is just one of these small little skirmishes, but this is one of the busiest, bloodiest battles in the West.
If I can sum it up in one word, it would be clusterfuck. It is just a clusterfuck.
That's the phrase that Lincoln actually used. That was in his original draft of the Gettysburg Address.
It was clusterfuck.
It was.
It was also
in the
battle reports.
We hear highly resolved this clusterfuck. But anyway, Chickamauga, kind of a funny name. I know there's a little bit of history to it. It's an Indian name by definition. There's some different questions about how it came.
Yep,
it's disputed. The River of Death is what people talk about it. And I was reading a story that partially there's a lot of the Indians had bathed in that river, and a lot of them had yellow fever. Got a lot of them sick and died. That's one of the rumors. Who knows? Who knows what it is? It sounds scary.
It could also be a Chickasaw word meaning good country, and it could also be an Algonquin-derived word meaning place of fish. For the battle, it was a spot where Union and Confederates, they fished.
That's why General Long John Silver fought there. For that reason, as a matter of fact. But some big armies involved. The Army of the Cumberland, one of 16 Union armies operating in the American Civil War, going up against the Army of Tennessee, not the Tennessee, but Army of Tennessee.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Union Army of the Tennessee.
Exactly. One of 22 Confederate armies operating in the American Civil War. So we mentioned a little bit ago some of the numbers, and when it's all said and done, there's going to be some guys coming in and coming out, obviously, but over 60,000 will go under William Rosecrans, who was in charge of the Army of the Cumberland, and 65,000 will be under the great Braxton Bragg of Cincinnati Bengals fame.
It's one of these rare battles where the Confederates are actually going to outnumber the Union. And now Bragg doesn't have all these troops at once. When the fighting starts on the 18th, he doesn't have all those troops there. He's actually not going to have them until like the evening of the 19th. Getting a little bit ahead of myself there.
I was going to say, I heard but the battle started on the 19th.
No, it starts on the 18th, which
So
we're going to talk about in a
we're
little
going to talk
while.
about Minty and Wilder, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which,
Well,
if you see me on Twitter, that's what I've been about. It's Minty and Wilder.
Well, we'll talk about some of the heads of these armies here. William Rosecrans, again, he's like many of these guys, a West Point guy from the class of 1842. Graduated 5th. He also graduated with James Longstreet. We'll see in this battle a little bit. William Walker, we'll see in a little bit as well as D.H., don't call me A.P. Hill, also went to school with him too. And up against, and in the other corner,
Braxton Bragg,
who ironically also graduated 5th in his class.
Yep, in 1837.
1837. He graduated with Jubal Early. Well, it seems like everybody graduated with Jubal Early. Have you noticed that?
Weren't there a couple of big classes where there was a whole bunch of them, like 2 different years? Was it 1842 was not the big year, right?
No, there was a bunch. There was probably 3 or 4 or 5 in every single one. But Joe Hooker was in this class.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Elephant Man, Sedgwick, was in this class. Yeah. He was in this one as well. So there was a lot of future big names and a lot of current big names. This battle would have been fought just about 6 months or so after Gettysburg, right?
Yes, yeah.
Actually, 6 months, not like 1 month.
No, 1 month. No, yeah. September. It's 4 months. Oh my God, your math is like...
You're already wowing us with your math skills.
You one-upped me on that. 6 months?
Okay. You know why? It's like a Chattanooga in my head.
6 months?
6 months.
Really, weeks?
How do we start
Who's
this
doing
one
Mary McClellan math now?
Oh, look at this! Huh? Look at this! Everybody have a good time. Everyone have a fun. And I'm rooting for your Indians tonight.
You know.
I know I am. Hey, go Indians, right? Go Indians.
Yeah, go Tribe.
We'll talk about the battle here in a second, but again, it's the biggest battle in the Chattanooga campaign.
Yeah.
And it does go on for a while. You know, as far as this whole, I know you're going to get into a lot of the history of the actual battle, but basically what it comes down to is, again, Rosecrans continuing to push Bragg around. Seems like every battle they fought, Rosecrans, Bragg would retreat, and it was basically fall back, chase. And this one was no different. He was pushed back from June to July 63. Bragg did retreat to the Chattanooga area, and basically that's where he went to go get him. Bragg ultimately shifted along the Tennessee River and crossed the Tennessee River basically unopposed. And then when this time went on, he just basically was chased by Rosecrans.
Yeah. So the one thing to mention about this campaign is, as you said, Darren, it's been going on for a while. Like, these two have been at each other. So they have Stones River, which was almost a Confederate victory, but Rosecrans just kept at him. And then you have the Tullahoma campaign I've been reading recently. That's one area everybody, I think, looks at Rosecrans and just sees Chickamauga and what happened there. If you look back to something like Tullahoma, apparently that is quite a brilliant campaign. So that's something I would like to read more about, because I think Rosecrans, like, he had talent. Obviously he had to, if he's able to get this far. But the one thing he does is, so once he knows that Bragg is in Chattanooga, he needs to create a diversionary tactic, because he knows he can't just attack. It's too risky at all, because they've already built up fortifications around the city, which the Union are going to use in the siege of Chattanooga once Chickamauga's all done. But that's for next week's episode.
I know you're all excited to talk about the C word, Chickamauga, okay? But we didn't talk about what we were drinking tonight.
Oh my God, right. Good call.
I mean, this is like 7 weeks in. Man.
I know.
This is Ricky era stuff. No. So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Shine by Allura Brewing Company, it's maybe about an hour and a bit from me. And I am drinking it out of my George Henry Thomas mug, because if it's Chickamauga, how can you have it without George Henry Thomas, right?
I'm going to call him The Rock. I'm going to give him that nickname.
We can't do that yet. He's not The Rock yet.
I'm going to do it anyway. I declare it.
Well,
okay. Well, I'm drinking 2 things to celebrate your outstanding podcast with Chickamauga. I am classing up by drinking a little bit of Rebel Red Adams County wine.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of wine left over from dinner. It's not Rebel Red.
I'm mixing wine and beer, so this will be a fun podcast. And I'm also drinking pumpkin beer out of my Gettysburg mug. So
nice.
Anyway, so there's our breakfast part of this. I think when you look at Chickamauga, I think the clusterfuck word you mentioned, but I think also on both sides, it's complete miscommunication and mistakes all the way.
Oh, absolutely. It's miscommunication all around. I mean, it starts off brilliantly for Rosecrans, I think, in the way that he creates this diversionary tactic where he sends Wilder in along the Tennessee River, and he's just basically like, make Bragg think that you got a ton of troops there. And that's what Wilder does. He's got them dragging limbs behind horses to stir up dust, and they're building a ton of fires to make it look like there's lots of troops there. just to get Bragg to focus his attention on there. And that allows Rosecrans to get through the mountains. But once he does that, he decides he's going to divide his army of the Cumberland. He sends Crittenden with the 21st Corps. They go and they end up taking Chattanooga because by this point, Bragg is like, fuck this, I got to abandon it. And he goes into Georgia.
That party was over. Time to move on.
It was done. We were done. Evacuate the dance floor. That's basically.
Wow. That reminds me, you're going to be doing some singing tonight, man?
Absolutely.
Talk about dancing.
No, the singing is not happening until we go to Surratt House Tavern thing. Walk and roll.
The walk and roll.
Yeah, that's where that's happening. There, I just called it. I just committed myself.
And that will be Facebook Lived. That probably won't be like getting killed. But I think, though, you talk about how Crittenden arrives from Chattanooga. He's going to come from the north, and you're going to have Thomas, who's going to be coming from the west, and you're going to have Alexander McCook, who's going to be coming to the Lookout Mountain area.
Yep.
I think this will prove to be a gigantic mistake on Rosecrans.
It will. Like, dividing his army is not the way he's got it is not good. And like, Bragg's going to get reinforcements.
But there was no rhyme or reason. They couldn't support each other. There was no supplies back and forth. They didn't know what the right hand was doing versus the left hand.
No.
I think there was an opportunity to maybe do some stuff, but he did take Chattanooga. He did take Chattanooga on the 9th of September without any battle. Through maneuvering and deception, and he gets a lot of credit for that. But I think he kind of, I don't want to say throws it away a little bit, but I think he ultimately misses an opportunity by splitting them up a little bit. I think he really thought that Bragg was escaping to Atlanta, and he was fully retreating. And I don't think he realized that Bragg was basically going to throw the brakes up and basically in that Chickamauga area and set up along that Lafayette Road and set up that whole eastern part of the ridge. It did come back and haunt him a little bit, especially when he did send some of his division guys.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Negley?
I'm going to let you talk about Negley because
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, James Negley is in the 2nd Division of the 14th Corps of Thomas, and he's basically going to lead the division. So he leaves Lookout Mountain, and he's under the impression, because that's what he's told, that there are no Rebs in the area.
Yeah.
He's going to walk in. It's going to be a parade. So on the 10th of September, he does cross the Chickamauga Creek. He gets over to the Pigeon Mountain area, and he starts to get hit with rebel skirmishers, like opening fire. And then he's like, oh shit, I missed the memo. There are Confederates here. He gets surrounded by Bragg. He gets surrounded by D.H. Hill and Thomas. And this is right off the bat, this is another mistake that veterans make, was you have a chance. I mean, Negley's going to get supported. He's going to get supported by Baird.
Absalom Baird.
Absalom. I can't remember the name. That's going to be a future Starbucks coffee name. Absalom.
That needs to be. He's also a future Medal of Honor winner, the battle in the Atlanta campaign.
So Negley's supported by Absalom Baird. Right off the bat, you've got Bragg has a chance to bag 2 divisions right off the bat. He's got them. So he has 2 of his guys. He's got D.H. Hill, who we'll hear about a lot tonight, and Thomas Hyman. And he also has Simon Buckner in his reserve, too, because band's all getting together. Both Hyman and Hill are under the impression that the other guy is going to attack first.
Yep.
Just picture them staring at each other. What are you guys just going to stare at each other all night?
Yep.
That's basically what they're thinking of doing. So what happens? It gives the opportunity for Negley and Baird to freaking escape. So they end up escaping through Stevens Gap. And you know who's pissed? Bragg is pissed.
Oh, yeah.
He's pissed. He's pissed because
he lost his opportunity.
He missed a golden chance to get them just because he gave the order. And for whatever reason, both Hyman and Hill just assumed the other guy was going to do it. Yep. And I have no idea why they thought that.
Well, Hill basically takes one look at it and he's kind of like deems it. And Hill's the type of guy that would basically look at an order. He's a lot like Polk as well, who's also part of the Army of Tennessee. Hill deems it impossible and says, fuck it. And then Hyman, who is known as the Lion of the West, basically becomes like a fucking kitten. And he's like, not happening. This is not happening. But the one thing to mention about this is that sending Negley in, Thomas does not agree with at all. And Rosecrans has got arrogant by this point, and he said, I want to go after them. And Thomas is, no, we need to bring everybody back to Chattanooga, and we need to attack this way. And Rosecrans is basically just, dude, you don't know what you're fucking talking about, but I do. But anyway, send Negley down the Lafayette Road. And that's exactly what happens.
I think in Rosecrans' defense a little bit, he was under the full impression that there was going to be no Rebs and they were going to get the back end of the tail heading to Atlanta. They were just going to snipe that.
Yep, that's
but
exactly.
You mentioned Leonidas Polk, another great name, by the way. A lot of great names in this band.
Polk and Bragg are the Sheridan and Warren of the Confederacy. These two do not like each other at all. And when you throw Longstreet into the mix, it makes for some really epic drama we're going to talk about in probably some future episodes.
Well, speaking of Polk, since you brought him up, fast forward a couple of days later. Now we're on September 13th, 1863. Leonidas Polk has got an opportunity to attack Crittenden. He's got them. Same deal. They're right at Lee and Gordon's Mill. They got the opportunity to attack them there. For whatever reason, Polk does not attack. He doesn't attack.
Oh, so that's what Polk did. Polk was just the type of commander that he would take a look at an order and basically kind of be like, this isn't an order, it's a guideline.
It was a slow poke is what his problem was. Right off the bat, within 3 days, you've got an opportunity to bag an entire corps in 2 divisions from Thomas's 14th. Right off the bat, you had a chance to get him. And again, missed opportunity. Missed opportunity. So then basically, Rosecrans realizes, oh shit, they're not retreating. The whole freaking army of Tennessee is there. So he calls the troops back together again.
He basically has to leapfrog them back from where they are.
Bring the band back together again, right? They're all coming back. So he brings it back. And I was thinking, my mind always falls back to Gettysburg just because that's the way I'm wired. It reminds me a lot of when Henry Harrison came and he told Lee or Longstreet, and they had to close that umbrella.
Yep, absolutely.
So now Rosecrans has got to close that umbrella. So they're all spread out. You've got they're all over the place. You've got his 3 armies basically spread out. So he basically has to race back. He's got McCook's 20th Corps, Gordon's Mill. He basically has to get everybody together again quick. So now, the thing that you notice about the army in this battle is they go from offense to defense to offense. Like you look at Gettysburg again, it's all defense, right?
Yeah.
This one, they're changing hats all the time. That's kind of the beginning part of the battle. And it does lead to Bragg ultimately moving his army between the army of the Cumberland and Chattanooga. So now he's right there. So he's right in the firing. And so he's thinking, okay, I'm going to cross the Chickamauga and I'm going to sweep down from the south. And I'm going to try to flank them on the left. Yeah. And that's really, as we lead into the 18th now at 7 a.m. when your boys show up.
Yeah, but the one thing I want to mention before we start into the first day of the battle, and I will also explain why, in my opinion, the 18th is the first day of the battle, because this is something that's disputed in the Civil War field. But one of the things to mention is the terrain at Chickamauga. It is very different from Gettysburg. It's very different from Antietam. And anyone who's been to the battlefield, which I've been there twice, you go there and you're like, whoa, I can't believe they were fighting in some of these areas. So it's thick woods, it's swampy, and trust me, there are swamps there because I've been in one.
There are probably snakes there, I bet, right?
I don't know. I ran very quickly towards it. It's actually just behind the Florida Monument by the Visitor Center. I was like, no, I'm going to go this way. And apparently that was not the way to go because you end up in a swamp. So the terrain is old growth timbered forest, which this is going to make things more complicated because so when you're walking around Chickamauga on a sunny day, like if you're out in the open, it's obviously sunny. You go into the woods. I can't imagine fighting in there. And I certainly couldn't imagine fighting in there in the dark, which is something that does happen in this battle. So you couple the darkness of the woods with the guns firing, with this hilly kind of terrain, and you lose sight of the army. So if you're a corps commander, you might not be able to see your troops. And the other thing that happens in this battle is because it's fought piecemeal, divisions, brigades, whatever, they're separated from their usual commanders because of this. But for this reason, so the smoke from the guns causes a very, very dense fog at times. But the other thing that happens is this is said to be a true soldier's battle because at times the commanders can't see where they are and the soldiers start having to make decisions.
Well, I think a lot of people who go to the East battlefields, Gettysburg, Antietam, even Kernstown, you see vast, wide open spaces. And I think people who don't travel to these other battlefields, admittedly, I have not been at Chickamauga. Mm-hmm. I think next fall we'll be doing a field trip correctly, so that'll be
definitely
fun.
Going next
right?
fall. Yep.
So I think most people assume they're like that, and most of them aren't. If you've been at Chancellorsville or even Fredericksburg or places like that, or even, as you say, Chickamauga, you're fighting in closed circuit areas. You're fighting, you can't fight linear formation because there's just no space. And the other thing it does too is it really invalidates the artillery. They didn't fire artillery unless you could see what you were shooting at for the most part. I know artillery does show up in this battle, and it plays a big part in guns being captured here. But I think people realize this is more of a guerrilla type jungle warfare, a lot of Vietnam type situation, perhaps.
Yep, it is.
Where you're basically every single soldier has to be their own commander.
Yeah.
They got to make their own decisions. because you can't fight in that elbow to elbow linear formation that Civil War fans are so used to seeing, because it's trees, swamps. It's probably a clown in the woods.
It's probably a clown. It's not an ideal spot to fight a battlefield. And I've said this about Shiloh too. Like Shiloh's not ideal either. But it's not like Rosie and Bragg are going to get together beforehand and be like, dude, this is a really shitty spot to fight a battle. Could we just go to an open field? You know what? Better yet, let's just solve it over a couple of beers. That's not going to happen. Well, yeah, but it's Braxton Bragg. He's not going to fucking settle anything over beers.
You need a Butterfield. Then you have it. Then you got
it. Braxton Bragg. We are talking about a man who argued with himself.
You haven't?
No, not in the way Bragg did. I was not quartermaster for something, and also in another position where I'm having to ask for things from the quartermaster, writing the quartermaster, and then writing myself back and denying myself what I've asked for.
That sounds like fun. It sounds like a lot of people I know actually.
Well, Bragg, you've managed to argue with everybody in this army, including yourself.
Great. Cool.
Good.
Well, let me set up the 18th for you, okay? Yeah. So I'm gonna fastball right down the middle. So it's 7 o'clock in the morning on the 18th of 1863. The Union is basically going to send in Robert Minty, a colonel, and its cavalry to basically guard east of Reed's Bridge. Okay, it's a delaying tactic that's going to happen against Bushrod Johnson's division and some of Nathan Bedford's Forest cavalry.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Well, you've got two of them fighting there. So you've got Minty with his cavalry. They are also called the Sabre Brigade. He's Irish-born. Minty actually spent time in Canada before the Civil War. He was actually married in a town about an hour and a half from me called London, Ontario.
I've heard of London, Ontario.
Yep. I think you've been to London before, haven't you?
I have.
So he's married there. He worked for a railway, and then he obviously came back for the Civil War. And then you have Wilder, who is actually, it's not cavalry, it's mounted infantry. And they are armed with Spencer repeaters. So they fired 7 shots before they had to be reloaded. And they're at 2 different bridges. As Darren said, Minty's at Reed's Bridge and Wilder is at Alexander's Bridge. So Bragg's plan is to cross the Chickamauga at 4 different places. So General Bushrod Johnson is going to be at Reed's Bridge. General William Henry, the names in this battle just kill me. General William Henry Shot Pouch Walker's Reserve Corps are going to be at Alexander's Bridge. And Buckner is going to be at Thetford and Dalton's Ford, and Hydeman is going to be at Lee and Gordon's Mills. So there's 4 different areas that they're going to be crossing. So
just picture a map, okay? You've got the Union on the left side of the creek, and there are fords, basically meaning places you can cross the Chickamauga Creek. The Union wants to keep the Confederates off their side of the water, so they guard the ford. So Minty, basically, a la John Buford at Gettysburg, he's basically going to fight them. And remember, we started this at 7 o'clock in the morning. So what time does he defend these bridges until? He defends these bridges until 3 p.m.
Yep. He goes back to one of the other Union commanders and he says, okay, it's got to be 11 o'clock. And the guy's like, dude, look at your watch. And he finally did. And it was 3:30. No idea.
Completely outnumbered. Again, he he's going up against a division. He's going up against Nathan Bedford Forrest, the Wizard of the Saddle.
Yeah, he's outnumbered 5. To call him. Yeah, Minty is outnumbered 5-1. And I mean, what he does here is amazing. He keeps falling back, which means Johnson's men have to move from their marching column to get into a line of battle. And then as the Confederates would advance, Minty's men would get back on their horses and they would move further back, which meant that Johnson's men have to fall back into their marching order, and then they have to keep going again. So this is one of the delay tactics that is used. So this is not, when I was reading this, this comes across me, this is not a skirmish. This is a battle happening right now.
And what does he do is he stalls them. And for whatever reason, the number disparity that Johnson division had, he had probably the best cavalry commander in the Confederacy at the time in Forrest. But it takes them, you're the math expert. How long does it take them? So 7 hours?
7 until 3 in the afternoon it's late afternoon before Johnson is finally in sight of Reed's Bridge.
So meanwhile, up the creek, John Wilder, who, as you said, is mounted, he basically mounted artillery, mounted infantry, which basically means they're using their horses to maneuver, and then they're jumping off the horses to fight. And they're moving around. And to your point, they had those 7-shot Spencers. They say you'd load on Sunday and fire all week. You know, that Custer's guys had, Gettysburg, as a matter of fact. But basically, he's going up against William This is another situation where you've got a guy who is holding them back, holding them back, holding them back. And basically, they end up repulsing 4 rebel brigades just using artillery and the Spencers. 4.
And they are down, they're less than 1,000 to defend Alexander's Bridge because Wilder has to send troops to help Minty at one point. So even he's outnumbered as well. And the terrain plays a role here too in hindering the Confederates. They are having to stumble over this really awkward terrain, and it takes them out of their line of battle, and it causes them to have to shift over to where they have to eventually shift back again when the terrain enables them to. That's one way the terrain is going to help out Rosecrans on this first day of the battle. Meanwhile, Buckner is he is at Bedford and Dalton's Ford. He hears all this shit going on, and he's like, fuck, I'm not going to move. And he doesn't get across when he's supposed to. And this is eventually going to piss Braxton Bragg off because Bragg thinks they're going to cross unopposed. And that's absolutely not the case. So Wilder's men, they rip up the flooring from the bridge and they make a fort out of it. And Walker and his Confederates end up going north of Byram's Ford because they're like, we can't cross this. Fuck that. Like, it's not worth it. So they end up crossing at Byram's Ford. Minty eventually ends up retreating. I mean, who can blame him? He's outnumbered, right? And Johnson eventually makes it across, but he ends up marching the wrong way. And he's got to double back again.
We've all been lost, Mary. We've all been lost.
I know, Lew Wallace.
Wallace, too much
Lew
time.
Wallace, poor Lew Wallace.
To your point, though, with this stuff, the delaying is gigantic because by delaying them, Wilder did retreat. Obviously, Minty retreated. They fell back. But what does it do? It allows George Thomas's 14th Corps to be able to march behind Crittenden and strengthen up the left side of the Union line, which is going to stretch from the left all the way back to Chattanooga. So because he delayed it, it allowed them to really bring up the A-team of this army. It really brought them up. And Cheatham's division, we talked about, mostly Georgian guys. There's that cool story about the woman here at the potato farm.
Did you write that story down?
I know that story. Don't you know your stuff?
I do.
No, her Debbie Thedford. You must know Debbie Thedford. Everybody knows Debbie Thedford. So she owned a potato farm, and she had a house. Her house, just so you know, was Braxton Bragg's headquarters.
Well, that's right. I've been there before.
So she's like the widow Thompson at Gettysburg with Bobby Lee.
Nice.
But she has 2 sons who are fighting in Cheatham's division, and they both fight on her farm. And she allows the Confederates to eat potatoes and hang out. Well, 2 of her sons get injured at this battle, and they're brought back to her house, and one of them actually dies in the house he grew up in.
I'm remembering this story now.
Really? You remember the story? And this is the house of Braxton Bragg's headquarters. She got the nickname the Mother of Chickamauga.
Yeah.
There's your potato story.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm always trying to personify this stuff for you, Fincher. I'm doing my best.
No, it's awesome. So by the end of the day, there's 9,000 of the Confederate troops that have managed to cross, but it's the end of the day, so they can't fight at all. So they've managed to push them back long enough that Rosecrans is able to, as Darren said, get Thomas marching along the Lafayette Road. Thomas is going to have to march all night, though, to get behind Crittenden and kind of extend that the Union left a little bit further. But the one thing I want to say about this is that when you look at what happens on September 18th, like, I came away from it the first time I read it thinking this is the first day of the battle, because this is not a skirmish. This is not just cavalry fight like at Gettysburg. This is an actual battle happening because of all the different parts that are in motion here, and just what this day means. Because had Minty and Wilder not been there, things might have turned out a lot differently.
Well, you got to think, if Minty and Wilder weren't there, Crittenden gets crushed. He gets absolutely crushed by Johnson. And then they punch a hole right through the middle of the Union line.
Yep.
He's gonna split the Union Army before even Thomas gets there. The Army's still separated. Maybe the Army gets beat in detail because of that reason. So it's very, very. I tease you about Minty and Wilder because it's always a noun, a verb, and Minty and Wilder when you talk about Chickamauga. Okay, but it's true though, because it allows them to basically put up some speed bumps, guard the fords, delay them as long as they possibly can, in time for Thomas to be able to set up on the left and really strengthen the Union line. So you know what? I'm going to say it. You're right about Minty Wilder. Okay, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So September 18th is the first day of the Battle of Chickamauga. And it is on this night that Thomas is going to move his corps from the center to the left, and his men march all night along the Lafayette Road, which is going to be a key thing in this battle, and they're going to be near Kelly Farm by dawn. Bragg orders his troops to finish crossing, and he sends Forrest to screen the army towards Lafayette Road, which Forrest is not going to do the greatest job ever at this.
No, he's going to have his issues against Brandon here coming up. But before we get to the 19th, though, Bragg does get strengthened by 5,000 of Longstreet's guys who show up.
He does.
So not Longstreet himself, because he's still about a day away. We'll talk about him in a little while, where he ends up walking around and hanging out for a while.
Yeah.
But he does get strengthened by 2 divisions of Longstreet's corps that is going to show up, about 5,000 guys. Yeah. And this number is what's going to push them really over the number for the Confederates versus the Union. So now they've got the number advantage. So now the Confederates are back on offense again, and the Union's going to fall back on defense again. And that's going to set up the 19th, which is really going to be Rosecrans probably with about 55,000 guys at this point. Yeah. And Bragg probably about 65,000. So about a 10,000 man disadvantage for the Union. Already the Union's shown communication mistakes. They've shown positional mistakes. They don't know the territory. They're fighting in swamps. They don't know where the hell anything is. And now you've got a really strong portion of a corps coming from the east, right after Gettysburg. Longstreet's going to come down, and he's going to head down there to really strengthen those guys. And this is really when you start to see Thomas kind of exert himself.
Yeah, Thomas is
on the Union
forced
side
to,
on the next day.
Thomas is forced to exert himself in many ways in this battle. Actually, I think he's kind of the true hero of this battle, one of many actually. So going into September 19th, the fighting is going to begin at a place called Jay's Mills, and it's almost accidental how it begins. Much of the fighting today, it's going to be another absolute clusterfuck. It's fought in different places. It's very piecemeal. Communication is shitty on both sides. Much of the attack is going to be focused on the Union left, but then it keeps going down to different places, which if you've been to Chickamauga, you'll recognize names: Brock Field, Brotherton Cabin, Vineyard Field, and all that are going to come into play here. Basically, what is going to happen is both commanders are going to make the same mistake when they begin feeding divisions into the growing fight piecemeal with little or no regard for the integrity of the corps. So you had divisions fed in, and their corps commander could be somewhere else.
Part of it, too, is I think, when you see some of these other battles, you're marching all your guys in, I don't think either general knew what the other army was, to be honest, especially Union.
No, they didn't. Bragg had shitty intelligence, and so did Rosecrans. The cavalry is supposed to be giving him intelligence, and Forrest is not doing a great job of it.
Well, you think, okay, so now we're on the 19th. Okay, Thomas is going to order Brigadier General John Brannan's division, okay, which is what, to your point, west of the Chickamauga.
Yeah.
They think there's one single Confederate brigade that's sitting out there. So he's like, go up there and get that ass, okay?
Yeah.
So he's going to go out there. He's going to go out there to Jay's Bridge, right near Jay's Mill, right near Reed's Bridge.
Yeah.
And this is really the opening engagement, not counting Minty and Wilder, the opening engagement really of this part of the battle. And this is really when the Union is now going back on the offensive again. This is where you start to see guys like Nathan Bedford Forrest. He ends up basically going across the field. Now it's 7 o'clock in the morning, where everything starts at 7 a.m. Nathan Bedford Forrest is going to attack across the field, and you're going to see John Croxton's brigade, again, taking advantage of that terrain and hiding in those woods. So he's going to unleash a volley, which is going to stun Forrest cavalry.
Yeah.
It's going to get knocked back. Eventually, you're going to start to see infantry brought up by the Confederates on a William Walker's corps to fight Brannan. And at this point, it's a fucking mess.
Oh, it is. And McCook has been ordered to go destroy Reed's Bridge, and they couldn't fucking do it. That's the bridge that would not die. But the one thing that Thomas has been told by Rosecrans is do not bring on a general engagement. So when he thinks there's only one there to fight, he's like thinking this is not going to bring on a general engagement. Meanwhile,
this general engagement is. He shows up. He's in every battle, apparently.
I know it happens. Don't bring on
find general engagement. Who the hell's general engagement? But again, go back to confusion, though. Croxton doesn't even know what 4 or 5 brigades to attack or go capture. Go find them. Okay, well, fine. I'll do my best. Croxton does get pushed back. Absalom Baird's division of the 14th Corps does kind of take over again.
Yep.
And then you start to see the arrival of the Confederates coming piecemeal. And it's more so in waves. This is where you see John Liddell showing up. He arrives. He's part of Walker's Corps. He's hiding in the woods, too. He ends up outflanking Baird's entire division. And again, it's that back and forth that goes on.
That's how it goes all day. Winfrey Field Brockfield, the divisions and troops are just going to be sent in piecemeal at a time because there's no communication. But I think part of the reason for this is just because of the terrain thing. Like they can't see where anybody is. It's worse than the cornfield, like we were talking about last week with Antietam. I called them the rolling hills, and you had some other
undulations
from the geography master over there.
You're not learning nothing.
But at 1:00, Bragg decides to order AP Stewart in, who he's had just AP Stewart's been kind of sitting waiting. He's going to go to the area where the Brotherton farm is, and he's going to hit 3 federal brigades immediately. And the fighting there again is just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, at 3:30 p.m., Stewart commits his last brigade. He manages to rout the division of Union General Van Cleves. But the Confederates...
That's a cool name, by the way.
Van Cleves, yeah.
I like that name. That's one of my favorite names.
Van Cleves.
Horatio Van Cleve. You're gonna say with that accent too. I don't know where he's from.
It's not as cool as Schimmelfennig.
He's probably from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, for all I know. But you know what? Though we'll make sure he sounds like he's from Transylvania.
What about Schimmelfennig? I can't say.
Schimmelfennig or Shishanovsky?
Shierzanovsky?
Shivanovsky.
Shierzanovsky. I don't know how to fucking say it. 11th.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris. 11th Corps stuff.
That's
our OO reference. The 11th Corps. There we go. We got to move into this.
Well, before all that happens, though, I mean, going back earlier in the day, Richard Johnson division under McCook, he's going to show up.
Yeah.
McCook. But basically, this is that really cool story, though, where the Rebs capture those 6 artillery pieces, and they go and get them. They kill like 45 horses. They kill like 40 guys. But they get those 6 artillery pieces from Company H of, so that the 9th Ohio, a bunch of Germans, speaking of Howard's influence was casting big shadows over this battle too. He wasn't even there. But this is under Colonel Kamerling. So he's basically, these 9th Ohio guys, these Germans, go ahead of the lines, completely disobey orders. However you say fuck it in German, that's what they said. And they go ahead, you know what they do? They recapture the 6 guns.
Yep. And there's a lot of that goes on in the Battle of Chickamauga. A lot of these stories about, just this heroism that happens. We're going to see it with Lytle on the 20th, which we'll talk about in the next episode with the breakthrough and all that. Chickamauga has been described to me before as not one big battle, but a series of smaller battles. And just those guys like that go in and they're like, we're taking these guns back.
When you study this battle, if you're an Eastern guy, you can't help but think of the Wheatfield at Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah.
You just can't, because it's very similar with different guys coming in, different divisions coming in.
Yeah.
Over a relatively small, I don't want to say small area, but a confined area, a limited area. And you've got divisions and corps rolling through one after the other. Some of the hardest fighting. You got Benjamin Cheatham, speaking of him. He could be on our podcast. He's a hard drinking, hard fighting guy. He could be a guest on the show sometime.
Definitely.
He was, Tennessean, so he's fighting close to home as well. He's basically going to take to the woods fighting, and it's going to be just brutal fighting.
There's so much going on here in this battle. And you have other people coming into it as well. Bushrod Johnson, around 2:00 in the afternoon, he's going to face off against Jefferson C. Davis's 2 brigades marching north from Crawfish Springs, which is where Rosecrans had his headquarters.
Can you imagine the shit he took being named Jefferson Davis fighting for the Union? I mean, you know what I mean?
He didn't help himself by shooting that guy.
Yeah, well, that's true. But
Which the anniversary was today, and he also didn't help himself with Ebenezer Creek. And then you have Union General Thomas J. Wood, who's going to figure in our next episode, poor bastard. He's ordered to march north from Lee and Gordon's Mills around 3 p.m. And he's going to be fighting, he's going to end up being in the Vineyard area, the Vineyard House, the Vineyard Field, which is where kind of the last bit of fighting takes place. This is where the Rebs again try to gain ground, and it's kind of the second to last thing that is going to happen in this battle. And this is also the time that Rosecrans is going to deploy his last reserve, which is General Philip Sheridan. So General Philip Sheridan is fighting in this battle.
Sheridan's here. He's going to be fighting as well.
Yep.
Sheridan, obviously, he's going to be famous for things later on, but he's fighting with McCook's division, McCook's Corps, rather. He's in the 20th, the XX one, the extra large one. But there's a lot of cool ones. I mean, speaking of course, you mentioned John Palmer. We talked about him last night. We would talk about him. He's a division commander in Crittenden. He helps to fight Cheatham, but he ultimately runs for president in 1996 with Simon Buckner, his adversary on the other side of the field. They decide to run. And neither wins. They ain't got it. But pretty cool. These guys all come back come back. But it goes back and forth and back and forth. It spills over to Brookfield. I'm stealing your thunder. This is your baby.
No, it's okay. You're doing awesome. But the fighting will wind down at Vineyard Field. That's just kind of where the rebels they try to gain their last bit of ground there. It winds down and it goes quiet for a while. Around 4:30, Bragg sends an order to General Patrick Cleburne, who has been held in reserve all day. And he says, you need to attack. And he says, I want it done by 6 p.m. Well, Bragg has no concept of time. So he orders Cleburne's division, which, as I said, has been held in reserve all day. They're going to attack in an area called Winfrey Field that has been quiet for a few hours. They're not ready to attack till around 7 p.m. Now, keep in mind, it is late September. It's getting pretty dark by this time. And because of the terrain as well, it's also very dark. They're having to fight in the woods. And the only source of light for them eventually is going to be the gunfire. So you can just imagine how that would have looked. Just flashes of light in there. And it's very, very chaotic. There are troops in this battle, in this part of the battle, that are going to be killed by friendly fire on both sides because you can't see the color of the uniforms and you don't know where anybody is. David A. Powell, who is actually one of the major sources for Chickamauga, says that this part of the battle is actually just, aside from adding to the casualty list, it's indecisive. Cleburne does not capture that many guns, but he does manage to push them back.
And obviously, to your point, it's one of the rare circumstances of fighting, night fighting. You don't see it in the Civil War because, for the most part, they would fight until night came. That was the end of it.
Yeah,
dark would come and it would take care of that. I know you're definitely a Cleburne person.
I'm actually shocked he was held back as long as he was, held in reserve, because I don't know, maybe things would have been different if he'd been deployed to some other area of the battlefield at some point in time. But he's held in reserve all day, so he has this night fight. And that's what ends. So the fighting at Chickamauga starts at 7 a.m. It winds up probably around 8:30.
And there's no daylight savings. Actually, daylight savings would be over by then, wouldn't it?
There was none at that time.
No, but when does that end? I guess it would still be going on.
It would. Yeah, it would. It would.
But again, just look at some of the carnage. Who's there is Jerome Robertson. He had fought in the triangular field at Gettysburg.
Yep.
They end up getting stuck in a ravine, and they're getting pounded by 18th Indiana Battery, just pounded. And Wilder himself was physically sickened by the carnage.
Yeah.
He just says, this is just too much. Eventually they fall back to Brookfield, but the night fighting, Cleburne himself even said it was the heaviest fighting he ever heard.
Yeah, and he was in the thick of it too. Cleburne was the type of general that would get in and fight with his troops. And there's actually a really amazing painting done it's one of his rare Western theater paintings. Mort Kunstler has done one called Cleburne's Night Fight. And basically what Kunstler does in it is he has, a federal soldier on one side and a Confederate soldier on the other, and they're both firing at the same time, and they're lighting up Cleburne as Cleburne's firing his revolver. So he's in the thick of the fighting, and that was typical Cleburne right there. He's told by Bragg, which he probably thought the orders were ridiculous.
But what's amazing is people are still coming into the battle. This is where you see Alexander Stewart show up from Buckner's Corps. He just like you, he's a former math professor, Mary. So, your long relative shows up.
Jeez.
Math genius shows up on the field. So, but again, it's this constant waves back and forth and back and forth, and it's one of those things where it just ultimately at the end of it's indecisive. The Union's going to fall back. They're going to fall westward again. The line's going to bend but don't break defense, as they say.
Yeah.
And now it's nighttime and the fighting finally stops. And you know what? Now it's freezing cold, and they're not allowed to light fires, and you've got wounded everywhere. There's thousands upon thousands of people there, wounded and not wounded. There's not enough water, so it ends up being just an overall brutal situation. The Rebs will hold Chickamauga Creek. Basically, at this point, right around here, I think, is when Rosecrans learns that the Army of Northern Virginia is here.
Yeah, that's when he gets news about that shit.
Just when your day is getting shittier. Fuck, seriously? I mean,
that fucker's here, damn it.
Well, you know what, though? As bad as it was, and it was kind of indecisive this time, he still holds Lafayette Road. He still holds that road.
Yeah, which is the important thing that he needs. He needs to be holding that road because that is major
that
road.
Night ends with holding Lafayette Road and Thomas still on the left. So they're just almost the same type of geometric position, overall stall battle. As the night goes on, there's still more guys coming and more guys coming. And then finally it does settle down. like we said before, now these guys are just, they're
Yeah.
going to chill, literally and figuratively. Even though it's this time of year in Tennessee, Georgia, apparently it's freezing.
No, there's a
It must have,
frost that night. There,
one of
there's
those one of
there's
those
a
Coors
frost.
Light trains must have gone by and froze everything. It's probably what happened.
There's a
That's exactly
frost.
what happened.
Like men woke up in the morning and their
Yeah.
blankets were frozen and they can't light fires. It's horrible. You can't imagine. Like I've read some of the accounts of the soldiers and just how their blankets had frozen.
And because the guys are so close to each other, they don't let them light fires. They've
Yeah.
got to just deal with it. So it's just, you just imagine, we try to, personify and humanize all these people. You're lying in this field. It's wet probably. It's freezing. You hear moans of the dead. There's no water anymore.
Yeah.
And this is just the first day. Well, first day and a half.
Yeah.
Apologies to Minty and Wilder.
But this is
the second day with the first full all day,
Yep.
extravaganza. There's more to come.
Yeah, there's more. And there's one thing we have left to discuss, and that is the evening war councils that happen.
Yeah.
So I do have a quote from Powell. He states, fighting had raged unceasingly for more than 12 hours, and by the time the sun set, nearly every brigade in the Union Army had seen action. There's only 5 fresh brigades that remain available for the next day in this.
Mm-hmm.
So on the Union side of things, for how things are, Rosecrans sends a telegram to Halleck, and he says, we have just concluded a terrific day's fighting and have another in prospect for tomorrow. The enemy attempted to turn our left, but his design was anticipated and a sufficient force placed there to render his attempt abortive. I call bullshit on that.
Wow. I'll spit up right there. Mary calls bullshit on that. Let's go to the film, Johnny. But you're right though.
I shouldn't be such a douche about it, but I mean, there's no way he knew.
You've got angry. You got an angry soul, man, Johnny. But you're right though. I mean, but you know something? What else is he gonna say?
Well, yeah,
I mean,
he's downplaying the struggle. Powell argues that in one of his books, that he's downplaying what's going on, the damage the Army has suffered. He's even described the number of Union dead as inconsiderable, but admitted to the number of wounded as being very heavy. And what is Halleck going to think about that when he gets it? It's like, what does this mean? Like, where are we at for this? And he does tell them Bragg's got superior numbers. And he concludes the telegram by stating the Army is in excellent condition and spirits, and by the blessing of Providence, the defeat of the enemy will be total tomorrow.
You know what? It reminds me a lot of Beauregard's Shiloh letter.
Absolutely, it does.
It's very, very similar.
Yep.
Where he's like, dude, I got this. It's fine. Take it easy. Stay home. Watch football. We got this. We're going to finish this up tomorrow.
But it's funny. There's somebody that's there that will have similar thoughts to Rosecrans, which is very surprising, and that is Assistant Secretary of War Charles Dana.
Mm-hmm.
He's at this battle, and
he's everywhere. Charles.
He is. Like, I thought he was.
He's at Vicksburg. He's involved in the Lincoln assassination conspiracy.
I thought he was supposed to be up watching Grant drinking. Apparently, he's down here now watching Rosecrans and spying on him.
He's ubiquitous.
He is.
One of those four-syllable words.
It's Darren counts.
I got to.
Like my grade 1 teacher taught us, ubiquitous.
So, you want to go over to the Confederate side of the coin, talk about the shit show that's going on over there, and that's on the east side of the river?
Yes. Actually, there's a couple things I want to mention about the Union before that. So the mood is described as being positive and upbeat at Union Army headquarters. Despite thinking themselves badly outnumbered, Bragg, they figured they've taken the best punch that Bragg can throw at them, which it's Bragg. I mean, that's safe to assume, right? And they think they've stopped the rebels in their tracks. The Union Army, though, is in a jumble. So Thomas is the primary field commander, controlling five of the Army's 10 available infantry divisions. Crittenden and McCook's troops are less defined since Rosecrans had cannibalized, which is amazing from Powell, cannibalized their commands through the day. And this is the piecemeal thing here. This is where, like, you're told to go somewhere and you don't have your commander. And I would like to think that, just from the human side of things, if you're told to do that and you don't have your commander and you're told to go somewhere else in the battlefield and you're like however far away from them, you're literally on your own, right? Because you're like, who am I supposed to be taking orders from?
Well, it's another battle that the Union didn't really anticipate happening at that point. They were kind of caught with their britches down a little bit. Yep. And so I think Rosecrans did a halfway decent job overall. I mean, he held the line. He maintained the Lafayette Road, which was the big road. Bragg still has a few more cards to play, but he's going to fuck that up. It's his war council, which apparently he's talking to himself again because no one hears him.
He's in the mirror.
But another story is another case where James Longstreet shows up and it proves again why he doesn't have the Waze app because he doesn't know where the hell he is. He arrives at 2 p.m. on the battlefield, and Bragg he doesn't put a guide to go find him. The amazing thing about this, he gets there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 19th. He doesn't get to Bragg's headquarters until 11 p.m.
He's bumbling around in the woods. The whole thing with the Confederate War Council is, first of all, how not to hold a war council. It's basically Bragg. He must stand in front of a mirror, as you and I were talking about earlier. I would say that the theme
I'm
of
Braxton Bragg. I'm smart enough. I'm good looking enough. Remember that Saturday Night Live skit?
Yep. I have my dog Braxy.
Your dog Braxy. But so he reforms the entire army, basically.
He does. Yeah, he just decides, he's like, I'm going to reform the whole army tonight. And he's said to have hated war councils. Like, in many of his subordinates in the spring of 1863 had went on record as saying they had no confidence in him, and he's still in charge. But that's because he's Jeff Davis's friend, which is another thing about
they got by the night of that
Davis.
By nighttime, by 11 p.m., they've got 3 lieutenant generals on the field. They got 3. You got D.H. Hill, you got Polk, and you got Longstreet.
Yeah.
And they still completely screw the whole thing up.
Yeah, so they do.
He basically reforms the entire army. So he's going to put D.H. Hill under Polk. That's what he's going to do. Okay, they were basically
the right wing
at the time, right? And so he's going to have Polk's going to take over the right wing. Longstreet is going to command the left wing.
Yeah.
Now, where it gets hilarious is either Bragg forgets to tell Hill that Polk is now that's the case. If he gets to tell Hill that he's now under Polk on the right wing, so he doesn't know that, and he sets up John Breckinridge, who was going to be at the D.H. Hill's division, puts him basically at the front. This is going to be the point of the next morning's attack. He's going to be the lead element.
Yeah.
He's going to be the one who's going to get going.
Yeah.
You know who doesn't know that?
D.H. Hill.
Breckinridge.
Breckinridge, and there's so many that don't know because Bragg doesn't actually hold a war council. He meets individually with these subordinates, which he does meet with Polk, and he eventually, once Longstreet bumbles his way in because nobody's there to meet him, and he's having to find his way to Bragg's headquarters in the dark in this forested area, he eventually makes it. So Bragg manages to talk to Polk and talks to Longstreet. He doesn't hold a council with both of them present at the same time. As Darren said, he's decided to change his whole structure of the army into a wing structure. So there's the right wing under Polk and the left wing under Longstreet. He's relying on Polk and Longstreet to relay this information to who needs to know. And since Longstreet does not arrive until 11 p.m., it takes him a little while to find Bragg because he doesn't send anyone to meet him. Like, what the fuck? And Bragg's plan is to attack the Union Army from the right to left in a ripple effect. Polk was told to attack at dawn, which is Breckinridge. Am I getting that right?
You are?
Yep.
Except Breckinridge doesn't know he's going to be
the guy. Breckinridge doesn't know that, and it's actually Hill that is meant to start the attack as well. And Longstreet would come in after that. So there's this communication breakdown that is occurring because people can't find each other.
Now, we know D.H. Hill fell asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning in the War Council. We know all that, right?
He's bumbling like right. He's wandering around in the middle of nowhere, and finally at 3, he can't find Bragg to figure out what the fuck he's supposed to be doing the next day. He's finally like, I'm in the middle of the woods. I'm just going to lay down and have a nap. You'd think he would have learned from what it means to lay down and have a nap after he had caught John Reynolds having a nap.
A nap is a good thing, though. Come on.
It is a good thing. It's not work. John Reynolds would tell you a nap is not a good thing when you get caught.
Well, D.H. Hill's the one time he got caught. Shit. But because we were talking before, can you imagine in Gettysburg, Hancock shows up, runs into the great Olive Otis Howard, and they have this conversation about who's going to take over, and neither of them remember it, and neither of them takes over? That's kind of what it's not as
that's what this
exact
is.
Comparison. But do you realize how bad you got to fuck this up when you're all in the same damn room and you're giving the orders and no one hears it? It makes me wonder if maybe Bragg just didn't say it and that was his excuse the next
But they're not in the same room. That's the thing. Like, he's telling Polk when it's just him and Polk in the room. And then when Longstreet shows up, he's telling Longstreet,
Mhm.
and he's saying to both of them, okay, you need to go relay this to your subordinates.
Right,
But
but
they
they're all,
don't.
they're all in the same. I mean, they're all in the same general area.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine an order that important, that big, getting that screwed up.
Yeah.
And an important one, especially when you're reforming the whole army. That's like saying both you guys are playing shortstop, not telling them, and both of them go to left field. You just
Yeah,
stare at each other.
exactly. And they don't know where anything is. And that is how the Army of Tennessee is on this night in 1863.
So
Nobody knows what's going on except Polk and Longstreet and Bragg, which who knows if Bragg has told Polk one thing, Longstreet another, the story gets changed along the way. Like, who knows what happens? Either way, Hill does not know that he's supposed to be starting this off because Breckinridge has not been told.
keep bringing this back to Gettysburg just because I keep doing it. It's somewhat reminiscent of the second day's battle at Gettysburg when Longstreet is expected, allegedly, per Lee, the Lee people, that he's supposed to start early in the morning, and it doesn't start till later, and there's no, or the next day when Longstreet's supposed to attack on the 3rd, and it just doesn't happen. So there's obviously a communication error, probably bad internet, realistically.
Trust me, there's very bad internet out where Braxton Bragg's headquarters is at Chickamauga. I've been out there before. It doesn't work at all.
It's because of the paranormal activity.
Braxton Bragg is a very angry ghost. He's a very angry man.
When we pick this up next time, because this is pretty much where we're going to stop the battle here.
Right here,
tell these guys,
where DHL he's fallen asleep in the woods, and he is not going to get the orders that Bragg wants him to attack at around 6:30 in the morning. He's not going to get that order.
Somebody somewhere smarter than me is going to have to figure out what happened with that poor council, how it all got screwed, because it just doesn't seem possible that it could be that screwed up.
No, that is Braxton Bragg. It would be typical of him because he hated war councils. So Polk comes to see him once the fighting ends. He tells Polk, okay, you're going to be in charge of the right wing, and this is what I'm going to tell Longstreet. Go to your people and tell them what they need to know. Longstreet shows up. It's well after 11 p.m. when he finally shows up at Bragg's headquarters, and Bragg is like, okay, you're in charge of the left wing, and you got these guys under you. Now go make sure you relay the orders. By the way, D.H. Hill needs to attack at like 6:30 in the morning. That's what I've told Polk. That's what needs to be relayed. So hopefully it's going to get relayed. That's basically how this whole war council goes. It's not like Meade's war council in the early morning hours, I guess would be late July 2nd, early morning July 3rd at all. This is typical when you look at Braxton Bragg at this time. I'm not saying this is how he was his whole career. When you look at Braxton Bragg at this time, this is how he was.
What's too bad about it, this could have been the battle where Bragg redeemed himself. He had all the tools. He had the Union all spread out. He had them on the run. He could have beaten piecemeal. It goes back to that first day again where you could start bagging divisions, but they don't know what the hell to do. Mm-hmm. It's obviously a bad leadership, and that's the Braxton Bragg MO that goes all the way through this. But this was not a good day for Rosecrans, the battle up to that point. Now, he was able to stumble his way through it and hold the line and hold that Lafayette Road. But again, an opportunity missed for him. But I don't think he knew what was going on. I don't think he knew who he was fighting. He started seeing guys from the A&V showing up. He starts getting prisoners from Longstreet's. He's like, Longstreet's here? I mean, what the hell? Mm-hmm. So he's starting to find out what's going on with this. I think he did a good job at the end of the day going from the offense to the defense, the offense to the defense, and not getting his entire army destroyed. But I think when we go back to Albert City Johnson again, if he was in charge of this battle, how it would have been different. I don't care if people don't like it. I don't give a shit, because I think he would have made a big difference. Because you would have had leadership, you would have had real command and control, and you would have had a more of an aggressive guy. But you know what? Braxton Bragg was aggressive in this one, though. He was.
No, he was. He was he had to keep, and it was reluctant though that he had to keep throwing in men to fight. But both sides are doing the same thing, because you look at how much in reserve that the Union armies got left at the end of the day.
Alexander Stewart breaks the line. He breaks through Lafayette Road. He gets there, and he looks around and goes, "Fuck, I'm alone." This is Ambrose Wright at Gettysburg all over again.
Yep, he doesn't have the troops.
He doesn't have the troops to support him, and he's got Walker's. He's got a reserve corps that he has to split up and fight piecemeal instead of using them to help
Yep.
drive the line once guys like Stewart get through.
Yep. And
So you can see,
what if Bragg had taken, when Stewart's made this breakthrough, if he had sent communication back to Bragg, which who knows if he did. So he's managed to break through at the Brotherton cabin, the Brotherton farm. If Claiborne had been close enough to come in, what would have happened? You know, like the
yeah,
only reason he's got to pull back is because he doesn't have the troop strength to do it.
it's really too bad for Bragg, and I'm not going to be soft on Bragg. He had the numbers. This isn't a situation where you're fighting piecemeal. This isn't Chancellorsville where you're going up against huge numbers and you're still finding a way to win. He has the large numbers and finds a way still to screw the whole thing up. Now, not to spoil the ending for those who don't know, but the Confederates do win this battle.
Yeah,
They
but
do
it's
ultimately win the battle.
because of a
But
major fuck up.
it's like the blind squirrel finding the nut is what it ultimately ends up doing.
That's exactly what it is. It's a huge screw. I mean, as we'll talk about, it's a huge screw up. But you know, the whole thing with like Bragg not wanting to send in. I mean, he's reluctantly sending in the troops, but he had more to send in. You know, it's kind of harkens back to McClellan at Antietam with not wanting to send troops in.
I think with McClellan though, I think he just didn't want to. He didn't want to wreck his army. He didn't want. He liked it in place. He just didn't want to use it for whatever reason. I think he wanted to protect his guys, which is probably why the guys liked him. I don't know if it was the terrain or the circumstance, or maybe they didn't think they were going to actually fight there, or what. I think Bragg got ahead of his skis. I think he was over his head.
Yeah.
I think he knew he had a shot, and he just fucked it up. He just shit himself.
I think Bragg at this point though is like kind of he's more concerned about what his subordinates are up to and what they could be doing. And I mean, in wanting to take over the army, in scheming against him. And I'm talking about Polk. He doesn't like that Longstreet is coming from the east. He sees that as being that basically offends him. He's like, well, what the fuck? Do not think I can hold my own, but especially Polk. But I mean, Polk, I get it, because Polk is the type of guy that gets an order and he's like, fuck this. It's a guideline. I'm not going to do it. You know, he's already encountered that in this battle. And I think Bragg is just, you know, this war council is like such a fucking clusterfuck.
I think you hit the nail on the head though. I think he was intimidated by the fact that we said before, you've got 3 lieutenant generals on the field with him. You know, if you're a rookie quarterback and you see Tom Brady, you see Mahomes, and you see Aaron Rodgers all behind you watching, you're going to be intimidated. I think that has a lot to do with it. Maybe not Tom Brady, because screw him, but I mean, pick another quarterback, all right?
Drew Brees.
One who didn't leave me.
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, fine, Drew Brees. But I mean, I think that's a lot of it too. I think he had an inferiority complex. He had the reputation of cutting and running all the time.
Yep.
And I think he found himself with an opportunity, and I think he was just so afraid of fucking it up, he didn't act. And when he did, it was just too late. But he still wins it. That's the funny part about it. They still win it.
And that's what we're going to talk about next week, is the conclusion of the Battle of Chickamauga and just kind of what happens a little bit after that as well. The siege of Chattanooga is what it's
going to end on 25th of November, which we discuss as the greatest day of the year.
Absolutely.
So, but again, hey, you know what? I think it's a great way to tease the way this battle is going to end.
Yeah.
I think as we leave this podcast at this episode right here, you see both armies again staring at each other almost where they started. And I think the Confederacy has an opportunity. The Union, I think, has an opportunity to defend. And we will find out what happens next on the next episode, 8th of the Civil War Breakfast Club.
Yes.
As Mary Fincher again talks once again about her favorite topic, the Battle of Chickamauga.
Yes. So anyway, until next week, we will be back with you Saturday morning for our Facebook Live, which if you're listening to this, it's it'll be happening at 10 a.m. Yep, happening at 10 a.m. This episode, I try and get it out. So basically what I do is once I get the episode edited, when I finish editing it, I post it as soon as I edit it. So it could be available at like 11:30 on Friday night, you know. But if you're subscribed to it, which awesome.
Just stay up all night Friday. You'll be out anyway. Stay up and listen to it.
I will be sitting in my house editing the podcast.
Come back from the bars at 3:00 in the morning. Throw in the Breakfast Club.
It'll be available for you.
It's all good. But regardless, we will be, to your point, we'll do the Facebook Live at 10. We'll put a bow on the first 2 days. First 2 days of the Battle of Chickamauga.
Yeah.
We will talk about anything anybody wants to talk about. Maybe even the Indians, who I just checked the score. I'm not going to tell you how they're doing in Game 1 against the Yankees, but
they're losing, aren't they? What's the score, Darren? Just tell me.
You really want to know what the score is?
Yep.
4-1 Yankees. Yeah, well. Hey,
God damn.
By the time this thing airs, though, the Indians will be winning the series.
Yeah, they will. They will.
All the confidence in the world.
They
And I
got it.
thought you said not to tell you how the score was. I thought you told me not to tell you the score.
Well, whatever. Whatever.
I'm going to get blamed. Anyway, I did my best. I tried. Go Sox. Sox in 21. Mary, always a pleasure. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Yep.
And again, everyone, thanks for watching this, or if you're listening to this, hopefully you're having a beginning of a fantastic and safe weekend. And we will see you on our Facebook Live at 10 a.m. Be there, be square. And we will look forward to talking to you next week when we talk about the final stages of the Great Battle of Chickamauga.
See y'all.
Peace out.